So you've got more. The lines are open. We got about 30 minutes left in the show, almost exactly. After the program's over, I'd like to remind everybody, and Kevin and anybody who's in town, if you'd like to join us for dinner, we'll be at Threadgill's, 301 West Riverside Drive, right there at the bottom of your screen. Show's over in about 30 minutes. We'll get there in about an hour.
Yeah. Well, I always do this. I mean, that was just sort of the preamble is what I've done. I'm really getting down to the meat of the topic, which is kind of a more sophisticated hysteric about gay marriage, and that is that gay rights or equality is a threat to religious freedom. And
oh noes.
Oh noes. I think my take on this is I think this is a patently absurd position. But I've actually seen it in multiple places, and I thought it would be worth addressing. I've seen it in multiple places, people making this sort of claim. So religious freedom, in my mind, is the right to believe any sort of crazy thing you want, right? We have an audience member whose signature line is something like, one person's religion is another person's belly laugh, right? You can believe whatever you want as long as, that's religion, right? But there's this issue of acting on those beliefs in ways that impact other people. I think that's really what the core issue is here. So your victim, if you decide to act on your religious beliefs and go fly a plane into a building and knock it down, your victim has the same right to believe something that may be the exact opposite of what you believe, all right? And he has the same religious rights you do. So in effect, there's this emergent property of equality here that just because everybody has the same right to believe whatever they want and the same limitations on their actions, that is equality. That's how we get to equality. So religious freedom implies equality. They're not at all in conflict with each other. So, and in fact, the person who doesn't believe a particular religion must have actually a stronger right. He must not be coerced into somebody's religious beliefs or yielding to somebody's religious beliefs, especially if somebody is giving that religious claim based on faith. If they have absolutely no evidence at all, say, oh, you just got to believe, well, it's tough. If that's your only evidence, then please leave me out of it. I'm not interested. So when people are saying that gay rights is somehow a threat to religious freedom, they're saying that they want their religious beliefs, based on no evidence whatsoever, to trump the real rights of real human beings out there. And so I think this is like pretty crazy. This whole thing reminds me of Animal Farm. If you've ever read the book by George Orwell, it's a very good book. It's a satire. It's kind of on tyranny. It's about tyranny, and it takes place where a bunch of animals take over the farm. Okay, and so they have a set of commandments where no animal shall kill any other animal, and all animals are created equal. But by the end of the book, you end up with the pigs taking over, and they say that all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others.
Nice.
And so it's very, very, very much like that. Is we have the Christians saying, well, there's this equality thing, but gosh, we're better. And you actually hear this in the Sally Kern thing. She had her. This
By
is
the
one,
way,
the warrior for Judeo-Christian values. Yeah.
Who is Sally Kern?
She is an Oklahoma lawmaker. She's a state legislator in Oklahoma.
No, she is one of the most ignorant and evil people on the planet.
Okay.
Every
Why do you say that,
time
Matt?
she opens her mouth, she spews some of the most offensive and hateful nonsense. And I think Don has examples of this.
Yeah. So one of the things she says is not all lifestyles are equal, not all religions are equal. So she's playing exactly this game of, there's this equality thing, but that doesn't apply to us.
Oh, you didn't have any of her more hateful comments?
No.
Right,
we could do a whole show on
Go look
comments.
up Sally Kern. I'm sure
Yeah.
you'll find plenty of quotes. She's a little troll.
She's a troll. But whether or not people are trolls, there's this question of, what are they saying? What is being repeated? What sorts of arguments are getting traction? And it's an argument from authority again. Just because she's a troll doesn't mean that what she's saying is invalid. So
she could still be saying something valid. The point, and granted, I sunk into ad hominem attacks, and mostly that's just to show how strongly I disagree. If you actually go and look at what she said, and by the way, let me back up. Why should anybody be bothered if I happen to get a little nasty with somebody who's been running around talking about how homosexuals are trying to destroy the world? I mean, nobody'd get mad if I said lousy things about Obama.
Right. Well, especially if you're backing up why you think it's lousy, right?
Because or any other politician who said something that people on one side disagreed with.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't have to. I mean,
She's
it's
a
one thing to
politician.
attack somebody's arguments
she needs
as
to have a
opposed to
thick
them.
skin, right?
Yeah. If you're going to go out there and put yourself out in the public and say things that demean other people, large minority groups, if you're going to go out there and pretend to take the moral high ground and be this champion of Americanism or whatever crock you're trying to feed us today that places you as the moral authority over everybody else, while spouting hateful nonsense about people that you don't like just because their sex life is a little different from yours, or they don't believe that there's a God there, or they don't happen to agree with every stupid opinion you have. I don't think you're deserving of really having your arguments discussed and treated as if you made actual arguments. I'm not aware that Sally Kern has actually supported any of her positions with a rational argument. I think that everything is just, this is the way it is, and I think this because God thinks this. Well, if that's the best your argument gets, then I'd rather not even discuss it and just call you a troll and move on.
Right, right. Well, we do have an article here. This is published in the Statesman on Thursday, June 19th, quite a long time ago. And this is actually what got me kind of hot and bothered about this topic. There's a guy by the name of Mark Stern who wrote an article that appeared as an editorial. He wrote it originally in the Los Angeles Times, and it's pretty easy to look up on the web. Will gay rights trample our religious freedom? And it's interesting because he's the general counsel of the American Jewish Congress. So we're not talking necessarily...
Oh, so he's part of the conspiracy with the ACLU and the Jews and the atheists.
Well, we're not necessarily talking about a Christian here. I imagine he's Jewish. He certainly works for a Jewish organization. So
this is propaganda to throw us off the track.
Propaganda.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So this isn't necessarily Christians, by the way, making these sorts of things. I think this is religious conservatives. So he's bemoaning the fact that equal protection is infringing on the free exercise of religion. And he says religious rights are likely to be obliterated by an emerging popular majority supporting same-sex relationships. So he's making the exact same sort of claim. So he actually provides...
Does he say how?
Yeah, he provides some evidence here. He says, well, there's these four situations that have occurred where gay rights trumped religious freedom, and this is an awful thing. This guy, I think, qualifies for fractally wrong if you actually dive into his arguments, but I want to try to keep it short today. He gave four examples, and I want to go through them quickly. The first one I'm going to take more time on because it's more interesting. First example was, quote, a San Diego County fertility doctor was sued by refusing to perform artificial insemination on one partner of a lesbian couple for religious reasons. The doctor referred to the patient to a colleague, promised there would be no extra cost, and offered to care for her during the subsequent pregnancy. This case is before the California Supreme Court, and justices seemed hostile to the doctor's defense during oral arguments last month. So this is the first case. And here's my analysis of it, is his religious beliefs with regard to fertility of lesbians is completely arbitrary. There is no holy book that covers fertility, aiding or abetting fertility of lesbians anywhere, right? So he's making this up, right? He could have just as easily had a religious opinion that said, oh, this is an immaculate conception, this is a good thing, I'm going to help it out. So his decision is completely arbitrary, all right? So effectively, he's using his religious convictions as a means to mess with somebody else and justify whatever he wants to do. So he's using religion as an excuse. So how about if we had a doctor that messed with fertility of green-eyed people because he was convinced that they were reptilian overlords, and that was his sincere religious belief? Would we allow that? Would these people support that? I don't think so. What about if we had a gay gynecologist who was suppressing Christians from having children? Would his religious rights be protected here? I don't think so, right? You know, this is somebody promoting their arbitrary beliefs. So really, I see this as an issue of contract law. Did the patient know about this restriction before getting involved in a relationship, in a service relationship with this doctor, right? I think this doctor did a bait and switch on this person and advertised himself as a plain old doctor providing a plain old service in this area, and when this lesbian came in and he found out, he pulled out this restriction from out of the blue. So consumers have the rights to know whether they're getting an inferior service or not. I view this as a consumer rights issue, right? The doctor's doing a bait and switch. He's pretending to be one thing and he's actually another. If he had a sign on his front door that said, I don't provide fertility services to whatever because of my sincere religious beliefs, more power to him, but the market is going to decide on whether or not he's going to make any business. So this is not a gay rights issue. This is a contract issue, in my opinion.
I was trying to figure out where I actually came down on this because, certainly he has the right to act in accordance with his religious beliefs.
He has the right to have his religious beliefs, right?
Yeah, so if there was already a contract and a bait and switch thing, then yeah, I would definitely support suing him, and I would agree with you that if this was made known ahead of time, that I'm sorry, but I don't provide fertility treatments to lesbian couples.
Right.
Okay.
So I haven't researched the details of this case,
cool,
but it is a contract issue. I think
I don't see how they could sue otherwise.
It's more than that than a gay rights issue. Okay, the second example. Let me go through them real quick. We have Catholic.
If anything, what I think they would sue for is he promised them it wouldn't be an extra charge. He's going to refer them to a colleague. And then what? Is he going to continue to treat them after the But basically, they should not be encouraged to siphon any money to this guy. It should all go to the other. So maybe there is a really good reason for the suit.
Yeah. So I to be honest, I should have looked up that case. But okay, so the next one, Catholic Charities in Boston and San Francisco ended adoption services altogether rather than be compelled by anti-discrimination laws to place children with same-sex couples.
Oh, good job.
Right.
This goes back to something we talked about yesterday. You self-righteous, sanctimonious assholes. There are rather than worry about placing kids with loving couples you just decide, screw the kids entirely. If we can't put them where we want, they don't get anything. This is exactly the same as this Christian organization that we talked about on Nonprofits yesterday that threatened to withdraw its support for a cancer charity because the Jerry Springer the Opera show tried to donate 3,000 pounds to them. And they basically said, no, that's an offensive show. And if you take money from them, we're not going to support you anymore. We're the bigger money. Look how much we love and care. Yeah, you're an ass.
Yeah.
When people ask, what's the harm? That's the harm. Rather than saying, hey, cool, it's nice that somebody that we disagree with, perhaps somebody that's offensive, has taken time out to donate. The charitable organization, by the way, is at fault here as well. It's not just the morons at the church who tried to blackmail them. The charitable organization should have stood up to them and said, no, I'm sorry, we're here trying to actually help people, and we're willing to take money from any organization, regardless of whether or not you happen to agree with them. And if you disagree with this, if you think it's so important that all of our money comes from sources that you approve and decide to pull your funding, that's your prerogative, and we can talk about it on the nightly news where you're going to look like morons. You're going to look like evil people who are more concerned with your precious image, because evidently your God's too weak to protect your image, than you are about the people who are actually dying of cancer. Than you are about the kids who need to be adopted. How dare you even pretend to hold the moral high ground while you're doing something like that? You're an ass. No other way about it.
So yeah,
what's the next case?
My analysis of this is this Catholic Charities dealing with adoption. This is a state regulation issue, and the state has an interest in regulating how children are adopted and how these sorts of things happen, and the church clearly has a conflict of interest here. So, and anybody with a conflict of interest when the state is involved in, providing a service for children or whatever, then that deserves some scrutiny, and this is not a gay issue. This is a state regulation issue. Third case, a Lutheran school in Riverside County, California was sued in 2005 under California's Unruh Act, which forbids discrimination by businesses for expelling two students who allegedly were having a lesbian relationship, those evil lesbians. in
My
contravention
favorite people.
of the religious views of the school. This case was thrown out in January, but students have appealed. Okay, I view this as a consumer protection issue. If you have a business providing a service that reneges on their their services, then they could potentially be sued. Right? This is sort of the state is in the business of regulating schools, and again, this is not a gay rights issue, in my opinion. Right?
When you start kicking out, like, what if a couple girls are walking along campus holding hands? You're going to kick them out too?
Yeah. Fourth issue, public school officials in Poway, California have unsuccessfully barred students from wearing T-shirts that registered their opposition to homosexuality on campus. A lawsuit made its way to the U.S. Supreme Court before being dismissed as moot because the students had graduated, but another federal lawsuit is pending. So I see this as not a gay rights issue, but an issue of students' free speech rights and whether or not the school can create an environment that's productive for education, which is what they're about. And what if the situation were reversed? What if we had gangs of gay students going around beating up or making my lives miserable for Christians? Would you really want that? Would you really want to have an environment where we have gangs effectively? Groups of thugs going out in schools and
this is perfect. T-shirts, straight is crooked, and they all run around with bent pipes, chasing all the people who aren't gay.
Right. So this Mark Stern, there's some other stuff in here that's worth going after, but I want to try to keep this short. Mark Stern is advocating that religious belief is exempt from the believer from contract law, state regulation, consumer protection issues, and that believers have a special right to persecute others. And he's blaming gays because those rights are being denied.
Yeah.
So there's an irony here that he says, this, very briefly, he's talking about the fact that he's kind of sad that even religion has gotten trampled by race issues and racial rights. And the irony is that, here he is, somebody who's a Jew potentially who is advocating for religious persecution, such as happened during the Holocaust, based on the majority rules. Anyway, so there's a lot of bluster going on, and a lot of hysterics, and a lot of crazy arguments and stuff that just don't make a whole lot of sense. So what's the explanation behind this? Why are Christian conservatives and other religious conservatives out to get gays? I think there are three reasons. I'll hit them very quickly, and then we can take the last caller and get some more callers. First off, we have vilification of gays for money and power. Effectively, the gays are the new Jews. It used to be well practiced to go after the Jews, steal their money, and persecute them and vilify them because they were Jesus killers and all that crap, right?
You could also say that gays are the new blacks.
Yeah.
Except that we're not actually making you guys do our work.
So this is the business thing. They're in it for money and power, and having an enemy is a good thing. There are two very good articles on this. One, both of them from the Southern Poverty Law Center. One is called Holy War, which is about the business of vilifying gays and how that's been a big moneymaker for the religions. There's another one called The Fabulist that's about a guy named Paul Cameron, who's one of the big pseudoscientists making up all sorts of crap, pseudoscientific crap about gays. And he's being funded by these folks.
The important thing of this, talking about the ability to make money, is if you notice those extreme Christian organizations that went after mythical Satanist groups, this happened a lot in the early 80s. You had Mike Warnke and a bunch of other frauds. Hi, Mike. Sending out this idea that Satanists were all around trying to take over. So there you've got a fictitious enemy. And it didn't quite work. It fell by the wayside rather quickly. I don't see a whole lot of shows talking about how there are Satanist cabals in universities who are perverting our youth. Instead, they pick on, instead of having this imaginary enemy, they take someone else and mold them to be an enemy. And in this case, they take homosexuals or atheists or whoever happens to be handy that they can actually point to. Liberals. Oh, that Unitarian Universalist church. I'm probably not going to talk about it on today's show. We talked about it on yesterday's Nonprofits quite a bit, actually. So if you go download that, you can hear a little bit more about that UU shooting.
Okay. So if gays become mainstream, the religious folks lose an enemy, and they therefore lose money and power. So it's frightening to the people who make money and do no useful work, but just are demagogues. It's frightening to them because they're going to lose their jobs, or their jobs in scare quotes. The second thing is religions want to shape family and society structure. In the sense of family, they want to have a hierarchical family where the father decides things, the mother obeys, and the children learn to be little robots. And this is an authoritarian household, and this is a topic of my December 2006 show, if you want to look that up and watch it.
Yeah, and to be fair, when we're talking about these, and we kind of use broad terms like religion wants to, or religions want to, or Christians want to, we're talking about specific groups. We're talking about the groups who are in direct opposition to this. We completely realize, and you don't have to email us on this, that there are, and David on the show is a prime example of this, who called in earlier, that there are plenty of Christians who don't necessarily agree with this, that there are plenty of theists of different ideas, and not everybody's promoting the same thing.
Yeah, and so the people that have this sort of hysteric attitude towards gays, I think that's where you really see this sort of thing. So equality is a threat to a family where you have this hierarchical structure and children who are taught to be sort of obeying zombies, right? At a societal level, we have the church. The church has traditionally wanted to place itself above kings in this hierarchical structure. And equality is completely at odds with this hierarchical structure. The church wants to tell people they want believers who are followers, who follow God and effectively follow the religious leaders, and therefore, people who are equal and people who can think for themselves are a threat to this whole family and society structure that they're trying to create. That is not necessarily a good one. It's a good one if you want to control people. It's not a good one for the people being controlled.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why they're hysterical. Finally, and I think this is the most interesting one, and there's gay rights is a wedge issue in churches. And so what you're going to see is when you start allowing, when you start allowing people to marry, the gays wanting to enter churches to get married, the churches end up in this awful situation of either allowing it or disallowing it, but they have to make a decision, and they have to kind of go back and explain to their people why they're making this decision. They have to put a stake in the ground, and they have to argue that if they allow marriage, they have to say, oh, we're going to throw out the Bible yet again. We threw it out with slavery. We're going to throw out the Bible yet again with gay stuff, and it begs the question of why have a Bible at all? Or if they go with the Bible, they have to explain, well, why did we decide one way on slavery and another way on this other thing?
They pick one passage over another.
Right.
We're going to ignore this one over here that says if a man lies with another man as he lies with a woman, it's an abomination and they should be put to death. And we're going to instead focus on love thy neighbor and turn the cheek.
Right. So it's going to have to be a lot of spin, and people are going to read their Bible, and that's a terrible thing for religions, for people to go read that script.
You want to
Anyway,
you want to help somebody be an atheist? Tell them to start reading the Bible.
So what will happen is we'll see in all sorts of churches, we'll see kind of a holy war where people will take sides on this issue because it is a contentious issue, and we've seen that play out in the Anglican Church, the Episcopalian Church.
It's going nuts in the UK right now.
Is it?
Based on what some people have sent me an email, fights over whether or not women should be ordained, whether or not gays should be ordained. They've found something to fight about, and evidently there's quite the row over there.
And there's going to be a lot of schisms, and churches are going to break up, and people are going to leave the church. So we're going to have sort of a loss of power or loss of importance of the church because this is back to this absolute morality thing. If you can't make up your mind about issue X, and half your church goes one way, half your church goes another way, that sort of defeats, in a very real way, any sort of moral authority that you have. If you can't, decide this issue, and it is a contentious issue, and therefore the churches are going to suffer for this. So all the bluster about gays and silly arguments and all this hysterics is just concealing the fact that the church has some very deep problems in store for dealing with gay rights issues as it comes through. They're going to lose money, they're going to lose power, they're going to lose their stranglehold over society, and they're going to all get divided up into pieces, and it's too bad that there's no God helping them out.
Bummer. Gays are going to destroy your church. And you know why?
So they're going to destroy
it. Because it needs to be destroyed. The
not
problem
the way
is in
they
the
think it
church.
is.
Yeah, the problem is in the church, in the religion, in the dogma, in the mindset, and it needs to be changed. It's one of those things where we talked about earlier. Tell us what Americanism is and why it's a bad thing that it's going away. We looked up what it is. I'm not sure if it's a bad thing that it goes away or not. But I'll tell you what I think, and that is bigotry is a bad thing, and it needs to go away.
Meddling with other people is a bad thing.
In your church too, and it exists within the ACA. There's nobody, at least I have not met anybody, who doesn't have some little trace of bigotry about something, some nugget of insensitivity, of xenophobia, of us versus them, that can play into decisions that they make. And the one thing that I've done, and I haven't resolved this completely, I'm sure there are plenty of things that I still need to fix, is try to recognize when I'm making decisions that are based on things like that, so that I'm not acting out of bigotry, out of prejudice, out of ignorance, that I'm making informed decisions, that I'm trying to do the right thing and treat people the way we should all be treated, so, with fairness and equality. When your church goes under, when your religion falls by the wayside because it was ill-equipped to deal with a changing reality, I realize that some of you are going to be very distraught over this. Take stock in what's really been eliminated. We've said many times before that we understand religions and churches do good things. Let's keep the good parts and chuck the bad parts. Let's keep what's real.
Let's cut loose the baggage
and get rid of the bad of what's not real. Yeah. There's absolutely no. We've built universities. We can use the elements of religion. The elements of religion that are good exist outside of religion. There's no positive thing within religion that is exclusive to your particular dogma or theology. And the fact that many different religions can get together in times of crisis and stop fighting with each other long enough to gang up on some common enemy, like the gays or the blacks or the Jews or the atheists, demonstrates that there's something that unites us. What you guys need to realize is that it actually unites all of us. Chuck out the dogma, chuck out the superstition, chuck out the baggage, and let's get on with improving life for everybody. Let's work towards a better world, and don't mourn the loss of your silly superstitions that you have no justification for anyway. The truth has nothing to fear from investigation. The truth has nothing to fear from gays. The truth has nothing to fear from atheists. It either stands or falls, period.